I don't know what went wrong between us, but it made me angrier until I was just like, yeah, I'm done.
It was supposed to be one of the most sacred moments in a mother's life, the birth of her child. But for Kody Brown, it allegedly became something else entirely, something tainted. According to both old footage and new book excerpts, the hours leading up to Truly's birth turned into a quiet heartbreak, marked not by joy or celebration, but by absence. And not just any absence. Kody was nowhere to be found, at least not where a husband should be. And what's worse, rumor has it, he wasn't even hiding. He was parked in a different driveway, Robyn's. That's right.
Robyn and I were put over kind of in a corner, probably for our safety.
In the middle of the night, while Christine labored through contractions, Kody Brown allegedly slipped away to visit Robyn, who was not yet his legal wife, but very much already the center of his world. And here's where things really start to sting. He didn't just visit. He reportedly asked Robyn to step outside so the TLC cameras wouldn't capture what happened next. A kiss. On the porch. Under the stars, while his wife was preparing to bring their 13th child into the world. At the time, none of this aired. The episode featuring Truly's birth painted a sanitized version of events. Christine's discomfort was there, sure, but the raw emotional fracture? Not even close. Only now, years later, does the fuller story seem to be surfacing. Christine, in a recent teaser clip for her upcoming memoir, appears visibly emotional as she describes the moment she realized Kody had something else to do that night, something more important than her.
Did you ever say, Kody, this sucks?
We didn't talk about it.
Yeah.
No, did not talk about it because we both knew there was something lacking and something missing, and it's like, we really want to talk about it. So we had one conversation on intimacy.
The exact words are reportedly under embargo, but the tone, crystal clear, hurt, betrayal, and perhaps most devastating of all, confirmation that she wasn't crazy for sensing it back then, because fans have long debated whether the rumors were exaggerated, whether Christine misread the situation. But according to insiders and production whispers that have begun to surface online, the truth might be even worse than the fan theories ever guessed. Producers on set that night allegedly watched in stunned silence as Kody left the hospital claiming he needed to change clothes. Only he didn't return for hours, and he didn't come back empty-handed either. Sources say there were murmurs about him stopping off at Robyn's to check on the kids or grab something important, but nothing adds up. Robyn didn't live with Kody at the time. They weren't married. There was no emergency. So what pulled him away in the dead of night while his wife labored with no husband by her side? And if that weren't damning enough, someone reportedly rolled on it. Unedited footage, time-stamped camera logs, and even leftover porch audio allegedly exist. Nothing public yet, but Christine's cryptic reference to what didn't make it into the episode has fans convinced she's holding back a receipt bomb for the book launch. And that's just the beginning, because while the kiss may have been hidden from public view, what came next only made things messier.
I have no intention of building out on Kody past. There's nothing holding me to Flagstaff, so there's no reason for me to want to build there.
Back inside the hospital, things were starting to unravel. Christine's contractions were growing stronger, closer together, the rhythm of labor fully taking over. Nurses moved quickly. A producer murmured something off camera, and yet there was a strange tension in the air, one that didn't quite match the typical hustle of a delivery room. Christine, visibly uncomfortable, kept glancing toward the door, toward the clock, toward the hallway, as if willing Kody to reappear. But he didn't. Not for a while. And while she never shouted, never made a scene, the silence said more than any outburst could. Insiders say the crew had been instructed to keep filming, but also to stay neutral. There was allegedly a quiet scramble behind the scenes. Should they acknowledge Kody's absence? Should someone go find him? But no one did. And Christine? She just kept breathing through the pain, clutching the side rails of her hospital bed, waiting for the man who was supposed to be there to support her. What makes it all the more surreal is how calmly Kody explained his disappearing act later on camera. He said something vague about needing to freshen up. But fans watching closely noticed he never once mentioned checking in with Robyn that night. That detail never aired. But now, years later, Christine's memoir is bringing that moment back into the spotlight with brutal clarity. In her chapter about Truly's birth, reportedly one of the most emotionally raw in the entire book, she describes the exact moment she realized Kody wasn't just running errands or grabbing a toothbrush. She writes about the sinking feeling in her gut when she saw the clock hit a certain hour, and still no sign of him. That quiet knowing that maybe, just maybe, he had chosen someone else. Again, and while the birth went forward without him by her side for key moments, something strange was reportedly happening just a few miles away. According to chatter from someone allegedly close to production, a camera crew vehicle remained parked outside Robyn's home for part of that night, not filming, but waiting.
We didn't know, we never knew what the other wives were getting money-wise. We just understood what we had, but Janelle saw it all. And Janelle doesn't say much, and she's very tight-lipped. But she's like, I saw where all the money was going, and how much money Kody took and how much money Robyn took was a lot more than you were taking.
That in itself isn't necessarily suspicious, but combined with the fact that Kody was spotted returning to the hospital with his hair freshly wet as if he'd just showered somewhere else, viewers are now wondering what else TLC knew but chose to leave out. It wasn't until much later, long after Truly was born, that Christine began to fully process what had happened. At the time, she says, she forced herself to focus on the baby, to block out the ache of abandonment. But looking back, she realizes that moment Truly's birth was a turning point, not just in their marriage, but in her entire understanding of what her place was in Kody's world. Because that night, while she was bringing new life into the world, he had made a choice. And it wasn't her. And as she would soon learn, the pattern was just getting started. In the aftermath, it didn't take long for fans to start asking questions. Something about that birth episode just felt off. Kody's presence was strangely inconsistent, his comments vague, the footage oddly edited, online forums lit up with theories. Where exactly did he go that night? Why did Christine look so subdued during what should have been a joyful moment? And then came the smoking gun, or at least what fans believed might be one.
He takes care of himself. He sees what he needs to do, and he just does what is right for him and what is right for Robyn.
A grainy still image surfaced, allegedly pulled from a long-deleted behind-the-scenes blog post by a former crew assistant. It showed a male figure, long hair pulled back, wearing a familiar jacket, standing on a dimly lit porch. A female figure, also mostly in shadow, appeared to be stepping into his space. You couldn't see a kiss, but you could see the lean-in, the tilt of a head, the intimacy, and based on the timestamp that fans dissected frame by frame, it all lined up almost exactly with the final stages of Christine's labor. Naturally, TLC has never confirmed the authenticity of that. Still, and the post, it vanished within 24 hours. But it was too late. Screenshots had been taken, Reddit threads exploded, and the Sister Wives fandom launched into full detective mode. One user claimed they had cross-referenced the street lamp glow in the background with satellite images of Robyn's old rental property. Another pointed to Kody's hair tie. It matched what he wore in the hospital scene just hours later. Others dismissed it as coincidence or fan fiction, but the damage was done.
So I haven't seen all of that, and I just saw where he said, legally, I don't have to have their approval. That doesn't make me happy.
The idea had taken root that while Christine was struggling through a lonely labor, her husband had slipped away to share a private moment with the woman he would soon call his soulmate. But what makes this speculation even more explosive is what allegedly happened behind the scenes. According to a former PA who spoke anonymously in a fan podcast, TLC did capture more of that night than they let on. There were cameras rolling pretty much the whole time, the voice claimed. They were told not to follow him, but someone did. And I remember hearing that the footage got locked down hard, like we weren't even allowed to log it in the system under his name. Whether that's true or not, fans have long noted that the episode cuts unusually quickly between moments. There's a suspicious lack of B-roll, no hallway shots, no footage of Kody pacing or prepping. It's as if something or someone was deliberately cut out of the narrative. And now, with Christine teasing in her memoir that the real story of that night is only just beginning to be told, speculation has reached a fever pitch. Because if there really was a kiss caught on tape, and if TLC really did scrub it to protect a narrative, what else might have been hidden? And if Christine's holding that receipt for later chapters, or a sequel memoir, viewers could be in for a whole new wave of revelations. And just when you think the past couldn't haunt this family any deeper, it does. Now, all these years later, the story has circled back, but this time, Christine's in control. The release of her new memoir has sparked a renewed firestorm, with fans pre-ordering in droves just to get to that one chapter. The one about Truly, the one about the kiss. And from the snippets she shared online, it's clear she's not mincing words.
I think that there, like I said, is a recency bias, and I feel like that there's rewriting of history a lot.
In a video posted to her Instagram, Christine flips through an advance copy of the book, pausing at a page with visible emotion in her eyes. "This was hard to write," she says softly, her voice trembling just enough to be unmistakable. She doesn't say what the chapter's title is, but fans zoomed in and enhanced the photo. Allegedly, the headline reads, "The night I was left alone," and underneath it, a quote. He said he had to change, but what he changed was everything. Subtle, not even a little. And the timing of all this? Beyond strategic. Because while the birth story is pulling headlines, insiders say the real bombshell hasn't even dropped yet. According to two separate podcast hosts with links to Sister Wives' production history, Christine's publisher is sitting on what they're calling the chapter with teeth. One insider teased that the withheld section details a crew member's off-the-record confession and includes an alleged incident report from that night, one that was never turned over to TLC Legal but was quietly documented anyway. It doesn't name Robyn directly, the source claims, but it makes clear where Kody went and who opened the door. Even without that lost chapter, though, the ripple effects are undeniable. The fandom has reawakened its fury toward Kody's track record of favoritism, especially toward Robyn. People are pulling receipts, quoting old interviews where he claimed to love all his wives equally, then comparing those to footage of Christine sobbing alone with her newborn, while Kody jokes about needing a nap. The hashtag Justice for Truly is back in rotation, and Christine, she's not backing down. In a recent Q&A, she was asked directly if the book includes everything she wanted to say. Her answer? Almost. Some things I'm saving. And that tease alone has set the internet ablaze. Because what exactly is she saving? And more importantly, why? Some believe she's holding back to protect Truly, who's now old enough to read the headlines and ask questions. Others speculate she's building momentum for a second book, or possibly even a docuseries of her own. There's even a theory floating around that Christine has retained behind-the-scenes footage from her final season with TLC and is waiting for her non-disclosure agreement to expire. Nothing confirmed, of course, but given how carefully she's been rolling out her truth, fans are watching every move. And as the birth chapter sparks fresh anger across social media, one thing's clear.
Kody actually said to me, I have no desire, Mary, to have a relationship with you. You can stick around and you can come visit me and Robyn and the kids if you want, but we're never going to have a marriage relationship anymore.
Christine isn't just telling her story, she's reclaiming the parts that were erased. And if this is only the first round of revelations, what she's still holding back might just blow the whole family timeline wide open. But if Christine's story of that night shattered the illusion, what followed in the weeks and months after Truly's birth only made the cracks deeper. Because the kiss, alleged or not, wasn't the end. It was the beginning of a pattern, one that Christine now says she couldn't see clearly at the time. But looking back, it all feels painfully obvious. Kody didn't just miss Truly's birth, he missed the recovery, the bonding, the early weeks when newborns cry at all hours and mothers need help just to get out of bed. Christine recalls being sleep-deprived, emotionally raw, and completely overwhelmed, yet still alone. And where was Kody? On a honeymoon. That's right. Mere weeks after Truly came into the world, Kody packed his bags and took off with Robyn for a nearly 2-week romantic getaway. 11 days to be exact. At the time, this was spun as a celebration. TLC cameras filmed snippets of their blissful escape, smiling in the snow, sipping cocoa, dancing around fireplaces like two newlyweds. And technically, they were newlyweds, at least in spirit. Legally, Robyn wouldn't become Kody's wife until later. But emotionally, that ship had long since sailed. Christine claims that during those 11 days, she didn't get a single offer of help, no overnight support, no coordinated plan from the other wives, just silence. As if the baby she had carried was her responsibility and hers alone. And when Kody returned, he wasn't just different, he was distant. It's here that fans began putting 2 and 2 together. Because while Christine was alone with a newborn, Kody was allegedly tending to Robyn's so-called postpartum needs. And that term, postpartum needs, has become a bit of a buzzword in the fandom. What did it mean exactly?
This is my story too, and I have the right to tell my story.
Robyn wasn't the one who had just given birth. She had children, yes, but none were infants. And yet insiders claim Kody justified his absence by saying Robyn was emotionally fragile and needed extra support during this transition. Transition into what? Christine wondered at the time. Transition into replacing her? Even Janelle, who typically keeps things close to the vest, reportedly voiced concern privately. One source who claims to have worked as a runner on set said that Janelle called Kody's absence a complete betrayal and that no man of faith would abandon his newborn like that. She never said this on camera. But Christine, years later, says those quiet whispers were sometimes the only thing that kept her from thinking she was losing her mind. Because the narrative being painted on TV that everything was fair, equal, and loving was in her eyes a complete fabrication. And the fans noticed too. Old clips are now resurfacing where Kody appears overly doting toward Robyn while being curt or distracted around his other wives. Side-by-sides have gone viral showing the contrast, flowers for Robyn's doorstep, a distracted shrug for Christine. And just when it felt like things couldn't get more lopsided, a curious money trail began to emerge, one that suggested love and loyalty weren't the only things being redirected. It started with whispers, little inconsistencies in the family's shared financial narrative. Christine would mention buying diapers herself, even while technically still part of the communal pot. Janelle once made a cryptic remark about needing to track every dollar she spent, since not everyone plays by the same rules. But the real spark came when a series of screenshots began circulating in a private fan forum, alleged PayPal transfers tied to Robyn's name. One of them was dated the exact same night Christine went into labor. The amount? $500. The label, emergency supplies. And that one detail set the Sister Wives fandom on fire. $500 in the middle of the night, sent to Robyn while Christine was in active labor and Kody was mysteriously unaccounted for. Coincidence? Some fans weren't buying it. Theories exploded. Was this the same night Kody disappeared from the hospital? Was the emergency just a cover for something else? And most provocatively, was this transfer part of a larger pattern of secret financial rerouting meant to keep Robyn comfortable while the other wives juggled essentials? It wouldn't be the first time accusations of favoritism surfaced, but this time the receipts felt a little too specific to ignore. Christine, for her part, didn't name names, not directly, but in one recent book event, she answered a fan question about financial transparency in plural marriages. Her answer raised eyebrows. Let's just say there were expenses I didn't agree to, and they didn't come from me. When pressed for more detail, she simply smiled and said, "That's in the second half of the book." Tease or warning, it landed like a bombshell, because this wasn't just about love anymore. It was about money. And if funds were being funneled to one household without consent from the others, that moved the conversation from favoritism to fraud.
Janelle is telling us it's actually a good thing that Robyn is coming into the family with no job because Christine just had a baby, so she could use the time off.
Insiders have hinted that Christine's attorney reviewed several family bank records as part of her separation process. Allegedly, there were inconsistencies, withdrawals made under joint accounts that were then rerouted toward Robyn's personal expenses, babysitters, home decor, vehicle upgrades. One source close to the family even claimed that Kody used a reimbursement system to justify spending on Robyn's behalf, writing it off as child-related support. But when Christine later asked where that same courtesy was when she needed postpartum help or groceries during lean months, crickets. And the optics haven't helped. Robyn's home, famously lavish compared to the other wives' properties, became a symbol of the imbalance. Multiple fans have pointed out the sheer size of her walk-in closet, the abundance of holiday decorations, and the alleged six-figure doll room for her daughters, all while Christine's refrigerator in early episodes was stocked with generics. TLC may not have meant to frame it that way, but the contrast was glaring. And now, with even financial favoritism entering the spotlight, some are asking the question no one dared say aloud in season 1, was Christine ever really seen as equal, or was she just expected to quietly hold the line while the money and the man drifted elsewhere? But for Christine, the heartbreak over Kody's betrayal wasn't confined to one night, one kiss, or even one child. It was the years of swallowing doubts, the decades of defending a lifestyle that she now admits she never truly believed in. And perhaps the most stunning twist of all is that while Christine was suffering in silence, she was also serving as the face of a movement. That's right. The same Christine who was allegedly left alone in labor, who quietly questioned why Robyn always seemed to come first, was also the wife who stood proudly beside Kody as they publicly lobbied to decriminalize polygamy in Utah. At the time, the show's storyline made it seem like a united family mission, one built on love, tolerance, and religious freedom. Christine appeared at rallies. She gave speeches. She smiled for the cameras as Kody railed against the state for threatening their family values. But now, Christine's view has changed. In early glimpses of her book, she reportedly addresses the legal push head-on, and her tone, according to those who've read advance copies, is sobering. She allegedly describes feeling pressured to promote a version of plural marriage that didn't reflect her truth. In other words, she was being used, not just by Kody, but by the larger system. A system that she says told her to smile, stand tall, and say everything was fine, even when it wasn't. And here's where it gets darker. Because Christine wasn't just promoting a lifestyle, she was also knowingly or not helping obscure the very real abuses taking place within the more extreme branches of their faith community. She references the lawsuit they filed against the state of Utah, how it briefly resulted in polygamy being downgraded from a felony to a minor infraction. But what's left out of the mainstream narrative is what that change meant. For many victims of polygamous abuse, that legal shift closed the door on state-funded reparations. It made prosecution harder. It emboldened predators in other sex, men who used the Brown family's image as a smokescreen to hide far more sinister acts. Christine, to her credit, appears to wrestle with this in her writing.
But notice how Janelle was worried about Robyn coming into the family with no income and that she was hopeful that Robyn would get a job But little did she know that her hopes would be in vain.
She reportedly admits that she had tunnel vision, that she believed in the Browns' version of polygamy so deeply she didn't see how it could be misused. But now, looking back, she questions everything. Why were they so quick to defend the lifestyle? Why did they minimize the abuses in other groups, especially when those stories were coming directly from survivors? And most pointedly, why didn't they speak up when their own church, the AOB, had its own dark history? Christine's grandfather, Rulon Allred, was assassinated in the 1970s in a bloody power feud between rival polygamous sects. She was just a little girl, but the trauma shaped her world. And now, fans are wondering if she's finally ready to connect those dots and hold the culture that raised her accountable. Because behind the baby stories and wedding rings lies something bigger, something deeper, and it just might be the real reason she left. The emotional fallout from that night in the hospital and everything it came to represent didn't just linger between Christine and Kody. It seeped into the children, into conversations that never made it to air, into long silences at family dinners where no one quite said what everyone was feeling. Over time, the older kids started connecting the dots too. Paydon, Christine's only son, has hinted in multiple interviews that he saw a clear change in his mother's spirit around the time Truly was born. He never named Kody directly, but he didn't have to. In one podcast appearance, he said, "That's when I realized Mom wasn't being treated the way she deserved." And that was the beginning of the end. And it wasn't just Paydon. Gwendolyn too has addressed the fracture. In one of her candid YouTube reaction videos, she said watching those old episodes back made her stomach turn. She recalled the loneliness in the house, how Christine had to do everything herself, and how the kids eventually learned not to wait up for their dad. "We stopped expecting him to be there," she said bluntly. "It was easier that way." Those aren't just growing pains, that's generational disappointment. The kind of quiet heartbreak that fans of the show felt instinctively, even if it took years for the cast to admit out loud. And then there's Janelle. For so long, she played the role of the steady one, the practical, no-nonsense wife who didn't rock the boat. But insiders claim Janelle wasn't nearly as blind to what was happening as she once appeared. In fact, sources allege that Janelle kept her own detailed notes, yes, handwritten diary pages about Kody's shifting loyalties and the financial patterns she started to see emerging after Robyn entered the picture. One of those notes, reportedly dated just weeks after Truly's birth, allegedly reads, "Christine is drowning. No one sees it but me." Whether or not that page ever sees the light of day, the implication is clear. This wasn't a love triangle. It was a slow erasure. And Mary? Her silence has always spoken volumes. While she and Christine have never been especially close, even fans couldn't help but notice how stone-faced Mary appeared when asked in old reunion specials about Kody's absence from key family events. More recently, during a live stream Q&A, a viewer asked whether she thought Christine was overreacting to the Robyn favoritism. Mary's response? A dry smile and a pause long enough to let the discomfort settle in. "Christine is allowed to tell her story," she said. "That's all I'll say." And with Christine's story now pouring out, there's a growing sense that she may not be the only one preparing to speak. Janelle's name has surfaced more than once in publishing rumors. And if those diary entries are real, and if Mary's silence ever breaks, what we thought we knew about the Brown family's dynamics might be nothing more than a carefully constructed house of cards, just waiting for the next gust of truth. Behind the scenes, the tension was beginning to rattle more than just the family. It was making TLC nervous. As Christine's story gained traction and her book soared to the top of pre-order lists, quiet rumblings began inside the network's walls. According to a former production coordinator who spoke anonymously to a fan-run blog, executives allegedly held internal meetings to discuss whether certain early season footage should be re-reviewed for legal risk. In plain English, they were worried about what they might have aired and what they might have cut. The source claims there were specific concerns about that birth episode, particularly gaps in continuity and crew notes from the night in question. It's been alleged that a segment originally slated to show Kody's exit from the hospital was mysteriously scrapped after post-production reviewed raw audio. That missing footage, long rumored, never confirmed, is now becoming the stuff of legend among Sister Wives fans. And according to insiders, Christine's legal team may already be aware of it. Some fans speculate that TLC edited out key moments to protect Kody's image during the early seasons when the Browns were being positioned as the friendly face of polygamy. But now, with Christine going public and casting light on what really happened behind the scenes, that decision is starting to backfire. The question on everyone's lips, if the network knew what was happening, why did they bury it? To make matters worse, sources say Kody himself has been attempting damage control behind the scenes. He allegedly contacted TLC execs with concerns over narrative distortion, pushing for a public statement that would frame the family's past as a shared misunderstanding rather than a case of one wife being marginalized. So far, no such statement has materialized. But the effort reportedly included a request to resurface balanced clips showing Kody with his other children, footage that fans say often felt more like damage control than genuine affection. And Robyn? She's gone quiet. completely. No interviews, no social media commentary, no attempts to counter the growing narrative that she was complicit in Kody's emotional retreat from the rest of the family. When asked by paparazzi whether she'd read Christine's book, Robyn reportedly offered only a sharp no comment before shutting her car door and driving off. The silence has been deafening, and it's only fueled more speculation. If the events described were exaggerated or false, critics argue, wouldn't Robyn want to set the record straight? But instead of putting out the fire, that silence has only added fuel. Fan petitions have emerged demanding that TLC release raw footage from the early seasons, especially the birth of Truly. Comment sections on the network's social media pages are flooded with calls for transparency. And all the while, Christine's story is gaining more sympathy, more readers, and more momentum. Because while the show may have edited around the truth, the court of public opinion isn't interested in cutting to commercial. It wants the unfiltered real. And it's not going to stop asking until someone finally presses play. And now, with Christine's memoir just days from landing in readers' hands, there's one final twist no one saw coming. According to whispers from two separate publishing insiders, Christine may not be the only one holding the truth cards. Multiple crew members from early Sister Wives seasons, now no longer under contract, have allegedly come forward with stories of their own. One source claims that at least one former camera operator has submitted a signed affidavit detailing what was captured, what was cut, and who made the call to bury it. Another insider alleges that Christine has possession of private emails exchanged between producers, debating how to frame the hospital night without showing anything that would upset Robyn's fan perception. None of this has been officially verified, of course, but if even a fraction is true, it could put TLC in a very uncomfortable position. The network has long portrayed itself as a neutral observer in the Brown family saga, simply documenting life as it happened. But Christine's framing suggests otherwise, that key moments were not only omitted, but intentionally shaped to fit a narrative where Robyn's image remained pristine and Christine's pain stayed out of frame. And now, with the possibility of behind-the-scenes receipts surfacing, text messages, raw call sheets, maybe even time-stamped footage, viewers are preparing for the kind of reckoning reality TV rarely survives. And then came the most subtle but perhaps most damning hint of all. In a livestream Q&A, Christine was asked whether she thought the network would support her book. Her answer was calm but sharp. They know what they filmed, and so do I. That single sentence has been dissected endlessly since, because it wasn't just a nod to shared history, it was a warning, a quiet way of saying, I was there, you were there, and if I go further, I can prove it. Legal experts are now weighing in, speculating that if Christine includes a chapter or appendix containing redacted screenshots, transcripts, or even location-stamped images, TLC may have no choice but to respond publicly or risk facing pressure from advertisers and viewers alike. Meanwhile, some fans believe that Kody, now more cornered than ever, could file to block future publications or attempt to reclaim narrative control through his own media venture. But so far, he's remained eerily silent. No statement, no counter-memoir, not even a social media post, just silence, which makes Christine's voice ring even louder. What started as a whispered betrayal, one man, one night, one kiss, has evolved into a full-blown family fracture, a credibility crisis for a billion-dollar network, and a raw emotional saga that's pulling millions of fans back to the edge of their seats. Because this isn't just a story about childbirth, it's a story about dignity, about who gets to be believed, and about who finally gets to tell the truth in their own words, on their own terms. So now we turn it to you. Do you think TLC purposely covered up Kody's betrayal? And if Christine really has proof, should she release it? Be sure to like, subscribe, and stay tuned because the next video on your screen is waiting. And trust me, you won't want to miss it.